Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. As I mentioned earlier this week, we're doing Friday, Get to Know You Fridays. So today I have the great honor of bringing Chris DeMars on with me. Good morning, Chris.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on?
So this is an interesting first episode of this for me to do. I mean, I've interviewed people before, and I do a lot of this on the Alexa channel. But this is the first time I've really had an opportunity to talk with you in person. We've never really spoken before, although we've been around the same circles plenty.
Yeah, we've crossed paths many a time on the circuit and just never. Like the one thing I can remember from it was RevConf, my first RevConf, and you didn't make it. You weren't there yet. I think you got stuck in an airport or something, or
That sounds right.
You were in traffic, and all I hear is Kevin say, "Where is Blankenberg?" And I'm like, "Who the hell is this Blankenberg guy? And why is he not on time?"
Yeah, I did make it. So let's be clear. I didn't miss my session or anything, but I was cutting it much closer than I would have liked to. I think the problem with Revolution Conf that year was that it was stacked right on top of something else. Yeah. And so I couldn't get there. Like normally I like to get there the night before the conference. Like Code Mash is a great example. Code Mash runs generally Tuesday to Friday, and I get there Sunday sometimes and just roll through the whole week.
Yeah.
So we can pour one out for Code Mash this year, man.
Oh, Code Mash. That's hard. Like this whole week has sucked, and just like not being able to go to Code Mash makes it even worse.
Yeah, it's a great way to kick off the year, and I think it's one of those things that you just kind of get in a rhythm for. I mean, I've been to all of them. In fact, this is a little side note that I don't make, like I'm not looking to promote myself too much about this, but you know that little Gearhead logo guy that is the icon for the conference?
Yeah.
I actually made that.
No shit. That's
yeah.
sweet.
So me and Brian Prince and Jim Holmes and a bunch of folks that started Code Mash. I'm not going to include myself in one of the people that started Code Mash, but I was working with the folks that did. And they were like, "Hey, we need a logo." And I was like, "I think I got an idea." And so I threw that thing together, and it's just lasted. So it's been been kind of cool. But yeah, man, I really do miss some Code Mash. It's such a good event, and it's weird to say. I know you've expressed your strong opinions on how you feel about virtual events. We can talk more about that here in a bit, but I feel like the thing that I miss about Code Mash and Stir Trek and all of the other kind of regional events that we have is that it wasn't the content that I miss. It was the people and the hallway conversations and the I hate to say networking because that sounds like it's strategic or purposeful, but you get to meet so many cool people from different backgrounds and technologies. It's just awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing I miss, and I try to tell people that like all the time, like especially newcomers to like the community and newcomers to like conferences and stuff like that. Is like I don't care about the content. Like the content's great, talks are great.
Sure.
It's not about that for me, at least. It's about the people and the hallway tracks and the dinners and the lunches and the drinking and just the hanging out and kicking it, you know, in the hotel lobby or you know somebody's room or at any event. That's where the relationships are made.
Right.
Not in the talk. After the talk is when the relationships are made.
It's not even about the relationship. I grow and learn so much from other people. Like a good example is I've had Corey Haynes on my channel a few times, and he may even be watching today. But I met him through this kind of community activity. I don't remember if it was through a user group or through a Code Mash or something like that, but I've known Corey for a decade or more. And every time I sit down and talk to that dude, I learn something new, right? Yeah. And now you multiply that by 50, 100, 200 people, and before you know it, you're like, I have everything I need at my fingertips when I want to learn something.
Yep. Yeah.
Man, that's great. So one of the things that I like to do in these interviews, and normally I roll right into it, so I've given you a soft bumper as we get into this, is I have some questions I like to ask people as guests.
Let's do it.
You're not prepared for at all. So this will be kind of fun.
Hell yeah, let's go.
So the first one is, are you musical? Are you musician at all?
No, I can beatbox a little bit.
Nice.
But other than that, no, I can't.
Okay. I think that's right. But you could imagine what it would be like to like be in a band with some of your buddies or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
No, like I have a guitar. I have a really, really nice Sunburst Ibanez acoustic guitar. Can't play it though.
No.
No clue.
I've got a beautiful acoustic hanging on my wall here, and I also can't play. Yeah, so I keep picking it up and like picking at it once in a while, but it just doesn't stick. The question for you is though, and this is a little sideways from the initial question about being a musician, is I want you to imagine you have a band and you've written your first album. What is the title of that debut album for you?
Oh, I was just thinking about this the other day.
That's great.
What was it called? I think it was gonna be like a self-titled album with the band name. The band name was hilarious as shit. It probably had to be like self-titled, something self-titled. Like, so the band name would be, I can't even think about it. I don't even know. Salty Mick 10-pack in the CBDs would be the band, and that would be like, the self-titled album.
But the first album would be self-titled for sure. Whatever the amazing band name happens to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. It's good that you've given that some thought. I like to make sure everybody's prepared. If they're coming on here, you should know what your debut album is. That's a good thing to have in the back pocket. All right, second question. If you could pick, were you into comic books at all as a kid?
I had some. I never read them, but I collected them a lot.
Okay, so if you could pick any one superpower. And I always like to clarify this, like Superman is a combination of a bunch of powers, right? So right. You can't pick, I want to be Superman, but you get to pick one power. What superpower would you pick?
The ability to never have a hangover.
Ooh. So just the superpower would just be the amazing processing of alcohol.
Yes.
So you'd still want the buzz and the drunkenness, but you wouldn't,
totally.
But you wouldn't want the regret.
I don't want the regret the next morning.
Got it. Man, you know what I found in my age? So in college, I certainly powered my way through many a hangover. But I found that lately, in my 30s and 40s, I don't drink a lot. But when I drink, never have a hangover ever.
I don't have hangovers anymore either. It's weird. Like I can kill a 12-pack of beer, wake up fine the next day, no problems.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
Very very weird. I go on this golf trip every September, except for this past September because COVID, and I'm sure you've heard of Fireball. Mm-hmm. So Fireball makes something called the Fire Box, which is a cardboard box with it's like a box wine. It's got the spigot on the side, and inside are plastic bags, 2 entire handles of Fireball.
That sounds like bad news.
Me and my foursome, so 3 other guys, finished one of the bags in 18 holes.
Wow.
But I felt fantastic the next day, which is not how it's supposed to go.
I don't even drink liquor anymore. Like too many nights in Canada when I was younger, like for 2 years straight, every weekend in Canada, just beer and Jaeger bombs and tequila. It's like,
right.
Just the smell of Red Bull makes me sick. So that's why I only drink beer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, beer is a slower way to get there, but it's good.
It sucks too. It takes me a lot longer because I have a beer allergy.
Oh.
So yeah, I developed it over the years. Like before, I could drink craft beer, no problem. I loved my craft beer, especially being from Michigan. But the allergy got so bad that I had to stop drinking it. So I can only drink gluten-free beer or rice beer. And since the most readily available type of rice beer is Bud Light, I just stick with Bud Light. And
there you go.
Just kill it all day long. So
right, yeah, I feel like I could probably drink 100 Bud Lights before I feel anything. But that's
the cool thing about it. Like you can just sit there and drink all day long while everybody else is getting blasted and be like,
right,
what's up?
Yeah, and I will tell you, since COVID's come down, like drinking for me is a very social activity. It's not like like I'm actively making a choice, but I don't usually want any kind of alcohol unless I'm in a social setting. Mm-hmm. And so like I can't even tell you the last time I had a beer. It's been quite a while because I just don't like I don't drink unless there's a reason to hang out with people or get into some shenanigans or something like that.
For sure.
All right, third question. And thank you for humoring me with these, is I want you to imagine you're walking through maybe downtown Detroit and you need to get over to the next street and you see that there's an alley there. It's kind of narrow, but it's certainly wide enough for you to walk down it. So you make a turn into the alley to get over to that next street and you get about halfway down the alley, and at the end that you're heading towards emerges a giant horse-sized duck, like big duck. And you're like, no, thank you. You turn around and you head the other way, only to see 100 duck-sized horses emerge. Tiny, tiny horses. They are all aggressive, and you don't have a way out. Which end do you choose to try to get out of?
The tiny horses.
Tiny horses, 100 tiny horses?
Yeah.
All right, talk me through this. How's that go?
I'll just start kicking. Start moving my feet and start kicking as much as I can. Yeah. Man, I guess that's okay. I generally tend to lean towards the big duck. I feel like he's still probably kind of slow, and I also imagine a situation in which I tame it and I can fly on a giant duck. I think that would be pretty sweet too. But I can certainly understand going after the horses, man. That's something.
100 of them. I mean, like, imagine just being at the park and you're surrounded by 100 ducks. That's a lot of ducks.
It is a lot of ducks. That's a lot of ducks. Well, okay, so can you have a firearm?
Oh, no. You unless you were strapped when you were walking down that alley. No.
Well, you never know. It's Detroit, right?
Right.
So
True.
Just start kicking. Just start kicking and swinging.
So, okay, so let's get into that, because that's going to be my next stuff that I want to talk about. It's kind of your background, history, all that. So you've been Detroit born and raised whole time?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So you're one of the few people that thinks about going to Canada by driving south, right?
Yeah.
That always cracks me up. I went to school in Bowling Green, Ohio, and so a trip up to Windsor was a pretty common occurrence.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, there was a guy, I'm sure he's not still there, but there was a guy at the time right outside the Windsor Casino. He had a hot dog stand. Still to this day, the best hot dogs I've ever had in my whole life.
Yeah.
And there was one time we drove all the way up to Windsor just to get hot dogs from his stand and drive back. It's like 2.5 hours from Bowling Green.
No shit.
But we definitely did it. It was good. So, all right. So you've been in Detroit the whole time. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Baker College in Allen Park.
Okay.
Like way later than I should have. I went back to school like really late in life just because I dropped out about 4 times.
Nice. Well, let's unpack that. So if you went to college and got into the software development kind of late, what was the early days of Chris DeMars out of high school?
Oh, well, my web development history started in '96. So I started building on the web at a really young age. Like I started with QBasic, then I learned about HTML. So I was about 11 or 10, 11, 12 years old. So I started writing code just at home, but I never thought getting into web development as a career was a thing, or like going to college was a thing, like not at my age, right? So
sure.
Like I started on Angel Fire, and like at that time there was no CSS, all HTML. So I did that for a long time, got into high school, and then I was going to take time off in college, or time off before I went to college. Went to college right out of high school for web, just to get a degree in web development. Even though I was self-taught, I'm like, well, at that time in 2004, you needed a degree to get a job in web development, especially you want to work for like a big company. There wasn't like the whole concept of a startup to take you right out of high school. I don't think that was really a thing yet.
No,
like it is today, at least, right?
Yeah.
So I went to Henry Ford Community College, and I really wanted to go to get my bachelor's after that and go to like Eastern or U of M or State or whatever. But I dropped out of college in 2004, and then I was slinging code on the side. But I've always worked non-tech jobs before I got like my legit gig. Like I've worked in food, I've worked in retail. I tried selling Kirby vacuums for a minute. I was a truck driver for 4 years.
You're a hustler. I like it.
Yeah, well, because I was always trying to find that dollar. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it was just money. Because like I had friends of mine who were making money, but they weren't technical people. So I'm like, shit, I need that money. Like all my friends got this dope stuff that I want, and I'm over here afraid to spend $1 at McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I've been in that position where I've had to roll change and take bottles back for money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've had utilities.
I've been there, man. I know
I've had utilities shut off on me because I couldn't afford to pay anything because I'm too afraid to eat food, and so I gotta, scrap money. So after I dropped out the first time, I wanted to go back a couple more times. So like I signed up for Macomb Community College and decided not to go. So I kind of dropped out after like the first week or two. Did it again at Henry Ford, did it again at Baker. And then I was still slinging code on the side, doing freelance work and doing, I was working as an independent contractor for a local company here in Michigan. So I drive my truck, get off work, go do that work, get paid like $7 an hour to do like WordPress migrations, shit like that. And then it just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I've been passionate about technology my whole life. I had my first computer when I was 2. I need to do what I'm passionate about. So I was like, and I'd be the only person in my family to go back to college and graduate, immediate family. So I decided to literally seriously take it seriously. Went back to school, graduated with an associate's of applied science with a major in web development, 3.96 GPA, Dean's Academic Achievement Award for my field of study, for that graduating class, dean's list, president list. I got 1B my whole college career.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
Thanks. And then I when I was doing that, the ass end of my college career, I was co-oping at DTE, which is the biggest utility company in Michigan. Did that. I graduated college. They hired me full time, and that was like my legit foot in the door. After all these years, that was my legit foot in the door. Was in 2014 when I got a job with benefits and like good pay and salary pay, opposed to like freelance work and doing shit for free and getting paid $7 an hour to do WordPress migrations. I was making good money, and then just downhill from that. Well, uphill, I guess. So.
Right. Well, downhill in that it got easier, right?
Yeah. Well, I started from the bottom. Now I'm here, right? So.
Right. No, I think that's perfect. Awesome, man. And so, I've been following your journey for a little while. I know you were you moved out to Denver. You were at a mattress company. Yep. You're Quicken Loans now. So what's been the focus of the most recent roles you've had?
So today, being a developer advocate at Quicken Loans on the DevRel team, it's nice. I kind of say I sort of fell into the role because I was sort of DevRel already. If you really think about it, like even though I wasn't really pushing a product, like because when I worked at Tuft & Needle, like I wasn't giving conference talks on, our hybrid mattress. Right.
Sure.
But I was giving talks on web technology and accessibility and kind of tying that into what we did. So I was already sort of DevRel without the actual title, right? So it kind of just fell into place when I heard that, there was being a team being created, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna have to give this a thought, because I've always liked QL as a company, and I worked for one of their biggest competitors, and I still loved QL when I worked for them. And I have a lot of friends that are over at QL, and it only felt right that I be at QL. Plus, I'm moving back to Detroit anyways, so this will be a perfect role for me. So it just made sense, and it worked out.
I really like what QL's been doing for the city of Detroit. Right? I mean, it's really helping grow and strengthen that town, which I know has had its downtimes recently. So that's good to see.
Yeah. QL does play a big part in the city for sure, and so like the other big companies, Blue Cross and Wayne State and DTE and QL, like they want to see the city grow and thrive, and I mean they'll probably do everything they can in their power to make it happen. So
I'm cool for it. Do you see that same kind of energy out of companies like Ford? I mean, they have all that giant stuff there. I didn't know if they.
Yep. So definitely the car companies too, especially Ford. And I'm a GM person. Like I love my Chevys.
Sure.
But Ford bought up a lot of property in the Corktown area, which is the first neighborhood that was ever founded in downtown proper. That whole area is Corktown, and they bought up the train station, and they bought up a bunch of property all along that area of like South Corktown to build it up and get offices and people back in offices and stuff. So it's really, really nice to see that, because, the more jobs, the more money, the better the city's going to thrive. So,
No, that's excellent. All right. So we've got a little bit of your work history, which I think is kind of cool. It's always here. It's always interesting to me to hear where people came from, because especially in the software development world, nobody has a traditional path.
No.
It's very, very rare that you're like, I went to high school, I got to college, I got a degree in computer science, found a job right out of school, got into development, and I've been doing it for 20 years. Like that's not a story that people hear. Right. There's often a lot of what you described where there's that hustle. I certainly had that early in my career where I was a web developer for a company, but I wasn't making much money. And I was doing a lot of freelance stuff. I actually have a horror story of that, where there was one Thanksgiving. I don't remember what years this was, but it's been a while. And I was basically running my own hosting company before the cloud really had gotten big. And I had probably 8 or 10 customers that I built their websites, but then I also was handling all their hosting for them. So it was like a monthly recurring kind of income. Mm-hmm. And it was basically just more or less to pay for the server, and then I could use the server to do all sorts of other things for me. But on Thanksgiving of that year, somebody got in, because I don't know anything about like managing servers. I knew enough to get it running, but like to patch it and keep it secure and do all that stuff, I didn't really know anything about that. Mm-hmm. And somebody got in, and they used my server as a mail terminal, basically to send tons and tons of spam on Thanksgiving Day. Wow. And it shut everything down. The websites couldn't run because they were just running so many mail messages through the server. And what became, a nice steady like $400 or $500 a month of income for me I immediately called all my customers. I was like, guys, I've got to shut this down. Like I'm in way over my head. I don't even know how to get this guy out of my server.
Right.
And so we eventually got it all settled and everything. I mean, everything was fine, but it was one of those things where you find yourself venturing into stuff that you don't even know why you're there, except that it's dollars, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was a big thing, especially when I got into the truck driving business, because my best friend, him and his dad, they're refuse drivers. So they're truck drivers. And they still do. They make damn good money doing that. I'm like, I need to do that.
Yeah.
So, I got my I went to school, I got my CDL, I did all this shit, and I drove a truck for 4 years. I did the garbage thing for a minute, went back to an old company I was driving for. I was home every day. It was local stops, Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday. But it was like, there's no way I can survive on $11 an hour. Like,
right.
At that time, I had a girlfriend. We were planning on getting married. We had I was helping to raise her kid. We had a house, 2 dogs. Like, there's no way this is going to happen. Well, push comes to shove, all that shit kind of fell through anyway. So,
sure.
But if it wasn't for all of that pushing me to hustle harder, I would never be where I'm at today if it wasn't for all of that. And to be clear, I didn't go to school to get this. I didn't go to school to get a job. I went to school to prove people wrong.
Yeah.
Like, nobody thought I would do anything with my life. They're like, oh, DeMars is going to live with his mom, and he's never gonna amount to anything. And it was just like a big,
right.
You know what I mean? That's
Totally.
why I went back to school, just to prove people wrong, because nobody thought I would do it. And I'm very, very goal oriented. Like, going to Denver, that was a goal. I did it. Getting a brand new truck, I did it. Moving out on my own, I did it. Speaking at so many conferences a year, I did it. Like, if you give me a goal, I'm going to achieve it. Any way I got to achieve it, safely, I'm gonna do
right.
it. So.
Yeah, no, but it's about that scramble and hustle, like we said. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I have a degree in psychology. I got out of school. I went to be a social worker. I was making $20,000 a year, which is it's basically like $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And man, it was painful. And it wasn't until I was looking. This is still when you looked at like job listings in the newspaper, right? Probably 98, 99. That I saw there was this company looking for a webmaster, and the company was shady as hell. Like, they, it's still around. It's called Vegas Experts, but it was based just south of Cleveland. And the basic idea was they had a team of about 10 people that really knew sports really well, and they had a subscription to like a big data analytics thing for all the history of sports. And some dude would get on there and be like, all right, today's pick is the Browns over the Steelers by 7. So like, that's my pick for go do with it what you want with that information. And they would sell those picks for like $20. And so people would pay $20. And here's the whole like scam of the thing is that they're just basing, they'll say like, on a Sunday after it rained and there was a coup at the White House, the Browns are 17-0 or something, right? Like, they'll have some crazy scheme for some historical pattern that doesn't really mean anything. And if their information doesn't work, if you lose, then you get tomorrow's pick for free. And it's like, man, like, okay, so you can always be wrong and it's fine. Because eventually they should win, right? So it was a weird business, but I built out their whole website. I built a bunch of administrative tools, and I learned on the job. I was like you were saying, like, okay, I need to be able to do this. How do I do that? And I would just play with stuff and figure it out and toy with it. And yeah, man, it's just crazy to think that like my first dev job, I wrote myself out of work because I built them a website where they could administrate and manage everything. And they called me in on a Friday one day and they're like, I don't think we need you anymore, man. This thing's great. And I was like, oh, that's the worst news ever. But again, it lit that fire. And then I went and found an ad agency down in Columbus and started building stuff for Ford and for Victoria's Secret and all sorts of other stuff here in town. Yeah. And before I knew it, I was like, I guess I'm a developer, right? Like I still had aspirations to go back to grad school and get a degree in psychology or whatever. So yeah, I'm glad the path led me where it did because I'm incredibly happy doing what I'm doing now for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm a big. It's super cliche to say, but everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
like, everything happens for a reason. I totally believe in that. I totally believe in karma, and I guess it kind of goes back to like me believing in the paranormal and supernatural stuff. But karma's a big role, and I do believe like certain things happen for a reason. So we're here for a reason, and we can only go get bigger than that. So
right. So one of the things that I really wanted to unpack with you today is you are a incredible advocate for accessibility. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I always like to ask people when they care about this stuff, because accessibility is a big part of what I think about, what I do when we talk about Alexa, right? There's an accessibility angle there that's just incredible for people that don't have fantastic vision. How did that become important to you? Because it's really easy for what we'll call regular people to just ignore it, and many people do. I know that's something you rail on.
Yeah.
What is it that made it important to you?
So I love telling the story. I tell it before every talk I give, my why behind why I do it. But it started a few years ago. I really wasn't thinking of accessibility as a huge thing out there on the web, like alt attributes on your images and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But I used to build stuff back in the day that I thought was awesome, but the maybe a regular user or any user would think this is a shit experience. So I started seeing a few people out in the community speaking about web accessibility, and Marcy Sutton being like a huge proponent of that, and she kind of kicked me into that. Not like kicked me, but metaphorically kicked me into the kind of accessibility space. So I started, doing more research on accessibility, really listening to stories of people who had problems with different experiences. And I kind of related it all back to my mom. Like, my mom she'll be 65 in May. She has glasses. She has trouble hearing. She has arthritis. She has 4 of the 5 main types of impairments that we kind of target, right? And the 5th one being like a temporary impairment. So broken hand, broken finger, whatever the case may be. She doesn't have that, knock on wood. I don't have any wood to knock on. Let's do that. But if I can make an amazing accessible user experience for her at the end of the day, I have done my job as a worker on the web. Now, if something happens with her TV, she's got to call a cable company to have them come turn the TV back on. Like, she doesn't work with tech at all. She's still got a flip phone.
Whoa.
Yeah, she still has a flip phone, and she even struggles with that sometimes because she's not a techie person, right?
Yeah.
The last time she ever did anything with anything mechanical with a typewriter, you know what I mean? So that she's my why. And like, yeah, she might not use a computer and she might not use any of the stuff that I build, but if she did, and there's plenty of other people out there like her, then I've done my job as a worker. And I always say it is your obligation to give a shit, because what are you doing?
Right.
We're all here for the user.
I've used the phrase accessibility isn't optional many times, and I think a lot of people treat it as a tack-on thing we'll do later.
Yep.
But if you build it in from the beginning, if you think about these problems from the beginning, everything's easier, and it becomes something you should do.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 things I usually say. There's 3 things that take importance over everything when starting a project on the web: security, performance, and accessibility. Not in that order, right? But those are the 3 things that need to come first, regardless.
Yeah.
Because everybody waits till the end to bake that shit in, and they're wondering, our website is slow, or we got hacked, or our user can't use this, and it's like, well, why weren't you thinking about this from the beginning? And I always say accessibility isn't a requirement; it's a must.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a really good perspective on that. I have an interesting take on. You were mentioning your mom uses a flip phone and isn't really very technical. I want to say the birth year is probably right around 1960. I don't know when your mom was born, but anybody that was born pre-1960, for the most part, I mean, there's always exceptions. But what I found is that there is this inherent fear to find out what something does. Mm-hmm. My parents are a good example of this. I got them Alexa. I got them all sorts of tech in their house that I've helped them set up. And one of the things that I found is that they always ask me, what's going to happen if I do this? Or can I just try that? Can I do this thing? They're always looking for like this permission and clear, explicit confirmation that what they do is going to be okay. It's like they're afraid to push the button. I always use the button as the kind of reference for this. Meanwhile, if you hand an iPad to a 2-year-old, they inherently just know how to use it. Because they try stuff. They're like, well, there's this button on the screen. What does it do when I click it? Yeah. And I think that there's something missing, because there's many people like your mom that are like, I don't need all that crazy technology. And it's because they're intimidated by it. Because there's such a huge learning curve, because they feel like they have to understand every one of those things. My mother-in-law is a good example of this too. There's so many. She has a modern new iPhone, probably an 11. and she doesn't know how to do anything on it because she just hasn't given herself the opportunity. She's afraid to touch anything that might break it.
Right.
And I don't know why it is that there's that big divide, but I do see that even in younger people sometimes, where they're just so uncertain of what this thing's going to do that I don't want to push the button and break it.
Right.
Hey, have you had any experiences with stuff like that?
Oh yeah, all the time. Like, especially with my mom, like I'll tell her, like, listen, I'm going to get you, an iPhone or something, or we need to get you some internet so you can get some type of device so we can video chat. And she's super apprehensive. She's like, but what if I do something wrong, or what if I break it, or what if I drop it, or I don't know how to use that. How am I supposed to use this? Is it easier? Can I see it? Like all of these different concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of using it? You just she can flip her phone, dial a number, and just call me. Like that's her thing. Like, why do I need a my dad's the same way. Why do I need a smartphone? He's like, what's the point? I'll just use my flip phone. I've been using a flip phone for years.
It's a money thing too, right? I mean, an iPhone is not cheap if you get a new one.
Yeah,
you're talking 4 figures minimum almost.
Yeah.
And then the service and the data and everything else. And I mean, my mother-in-law still thinks she has limited data. She's on my plan; it's unlimited everything. But she still is worried. Like she turns her phone off when she leaves the house. I'm like, that's defeating the entire purpose of having your phone. Like,
my mom doesn't even take her phone with her sometimes. I'm like, why the hell do you have a phone? Like, what are you doing with your life, dude?
Right. The whole idea of having that thing with you, it's a lifeline, right?
Yeah. If she's like, nobody calls me. I'm like, what?
Right. The people in the chat are finding this very relatable. That's good.
Cool.
I think everybody has a mom or an aunt or somebody that's just like this. So let's jump back to Quicken Loans because I want to know more about this. So you are a developer advocate at Quicken Loans.
Yep.
Are you a public facing advocate, internally facing?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So my team, we are, there's so many definitions for what a developer advocate is.
Right.
I personally like to say I'm a voice for the internal and external communities, right? Like anybody that wants to know more about any products that we have that are open source, cool, we can talk about that, or I can direct you to a team that knows about stuff like that. And then even internally, like best practices, ways to do things, accessibility, and how to like bake accessibility from the beginning, and how to do A, B, and C. So, and then like, the writing and all the other stuff that comes along with developer advocacy.
Right. So do you find yourself having to spread the word inside the company about how things work and the products that have been built and stuff like that? Or is it mostly just like best practices, talking to dev teams, that kind of stuff?
It's kind of a mix of everything, because some of the teams might not know that there are certain products within the company that they can use. So if we get wind of them, we'll talk about them, or we'll talk about them like in blog posts or something like that, like internal intranet stuff.
Sure.
But it's kind of like just a mix of advocating for all the technology that we have, so everybody is aware of all the powerful tools that we have within the company.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that's something that, especially at a company the size of Amazon or Quicken Loans, where you have these massive development teams all over the company, and they're all building awesome stuff. But then, like, I'm not even aware that thing exists. I'll give you an example at Amazon. Just within Alexa, there are so many different APIs and services and things. Like we have a Slack channel that's just all of the PMs primarily and people that are interested in paying attention. But you can't possibly know who owns something. There's no like massive chart for any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So you jump in there and you're like, I need help with this thing. Who owns it? And thankfully people pay attention and they'll chime in and be like, oh, that's mine. Come, let's do email, or let's have a meeting or whatever. Based on an issue I found yesterday morning, I've got to send an email as soon as we're done here to talk about, like, I don't think we fully thought this through. We've got a couple of leaky issues. So I think there's a lot of that kind of internal stuff. I think the way you described it is pretty good. For me, the way I think about evangelism inside Amazon or outside Amazon is that my job is to be the representative for the public to our product team. So do you guys have do you have any public APIs, stuff that like other developers can consume?
The only thing that we have right now that I believe is totally open source is our Spark design system. So we have an actual design system team. And it's the Spark design system team, and they created the Spark design system, which you can consume out there. It's completely open source. You can, use the raw HTML. There's an Angular component if your company uses Angular. And there's also the React side too. So you have 3 different types of code that you can use that all use Spark. But yeah, if you go, I think it's sparkdesignsystems.com, or you just Google Spark Design System Quicken Loans. it'll take you to the page and you can see how to, hit the GitHub up. We featured it in Hacktoberfest. So we talked about it internally. We talked about it externally, tried to tweet as much as possible, and labeled a lot of issues for Hacktoberfest. And we had a lot of people come through and submit stuff, even like international. Nice. We got PRs internationally, which was really, really sweet. So yeah, there's a whole team dedicated to that. And I'm really passionate about that too, because Spark is really, really, there's a lot of accessibility baked into Spark, but I'm really into design systems as well. Like I've worked on design systems at other companies. So I really want to get into speaking more and talking about the design system that we have at QL and get more people interested in using it. Because you don't need to build a fintech mortgage application with a design system. You can build anything you want, right? But it's out there to consume, right? So I definitely encourage people, go out there, check it out, submit some issues, bugs, submit PRs, engage with us a little bit on that so we can kind of make it bigger than what it is for the masses in the developer community.
Right. I think that's perfect. I think that's one of the things that is a real struggle sometimes, is that I'm bringing back real customer feedback. Hey, this thing's broken, or I don't like how this thing works, or I need this additional information, and getting that stuff back into the product teams and saying, guys, like, this is what they're asking for. I think it's very easy when you work on a product team, and I'm not necessarily pointing fingers at anyone, but when you work on a product team and you're kind of siloed away from the actual customer, the consumers of that thing, it's really easy to make decisions without understanding how exactly someone's going to use it. Or again, it's almost an accessibility story about like, okay, yeah, we can roll this thing out, but it would actually be far more useful if we listen to how people are actually using it, or drew some analytics on top of it. But it's a weird business, this advocacy, because it's so much more than just being a developer. Like, you have to be able to sling code and you have to be able to talk intelligently and build stuff, but you also have to be able to effectively communicate ideas and draw upon not only your experiences, but empathize with those that are having those kinds of struggles. And it's weird. I often, especially around my close friends, I get a hard time that I'm just like a marketing developer. I'm not a real developer. Right. But I think it draws on far more than just being a developer. I think you have to be a strong developer to do this stuff, but you have to be able to understand and identify where other developers might have issues. And I think it's pretty easy to just silo yourself and say, well, this is the way I do it, and it works fine.
You have to have a lot of emotional intelligence, or at least you have to be very mature in that emotional intelligence model to do this job. And I am the last person to say I'm the best. I have the best emotional intelligence. Like, it's something I've worked on for a few years now, because I was always that person, like, I don't want to hear any questions. It's my way or the highway. This is the way you should do it, because I know better, right? There is no argument here. There's no debate. Like, it's either going to be this way or it's not going to be done at all, or I don't want any part of it. Well, I learned the hard way how that does not work. No, you know what I'm saying?
Even if you are right.
Right, and yeah, because nobody wants to be told no, right? And if you're constantly confrontational, they're just going to shut you out entirely. And I learned that the hard way, and I mean, it's been a few years, and I've made progress along the way. I can definitely say I made progress, going through different companies since all of that emotional intelligence stuff kind of surfaced for me. But it definitely, if you take a step back and listen, it's a lot easier than taking a step forward and talking.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think the listening is a key component of that. So speaking of listening, I spend a little bit too much time on Twitter sometimes. And so without paying attention to you specifically, I'm certainly aware of stuff you talk about, and kind of, in my circle of people, however many thousand people I follow, I feel like I get a good feeling, not necessarily for the person, but for their thoughts and feelings on topics. And there's one that seems to be pretty sour with you sometimes, which is the word JavaScript.
I knew that was coming.
And so I would love to dive into that a little bit, because you've been on my stream. I live in JavaScript. I do a lot of stuff in JavaScript, and I don't necessarily love it. I actually came from Microsoft, the C# world. Like, I like bigger, more structured languages, but JavaScript gets the job done for a lot of things. And I know you have a specific hatred. I'd love to hear more about how and why.
Well, so it kind of goes back to when I started. Like, when I started, 11-year-old Chris didn't know about JavaScript. JavaScript really wasn't a thing yet, right? So I did everything in HTML. My whole career, I've probably written less than 100 lines of JavaScript in the 25 years that I've been doing this. right? Because my whole career, I was the HTML and CSS specialist. Like that's what I specialized in.
Right.
And then the accessibility part, right? So I have a library of books on JavaScript, and each one has a bookmark maybe halfway through or like a quarter of the way through.
Sure.
Because like I'll do it, but it doesn't make a single lick of sense to me. Especially like when it like really blew up and everybody was like, oh, if you don't know JavaScript, you're not a real developer. And I've been told I'm not a real developer.
Sure.
I'm
well,
not a JavaScript
anybody that sees HTML, CSS thinks,
Right.
oh, they're a designer at best.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not a designer. Like, yeah, I can design, but that's not my role.
No.
So that's why like I have such a disdain for JavaScript, because you don't need it for everything on the web, and it causes, in my opinion, causes more problems than it does anything good. Right. You know what I mean? And I'm not hating on, any of my friends that are JavaScript engineers who write JavaScript shit. I wish I could do it. Like I have a bunch of half-baked projects, but they all require JavaScript, and I can't do it because I literally just stare at the screen.
But on the same token, if you sat down with somebody that's a hardcore JavaScript engineer, that's what they do. Like they live in Node and all the other stuff. And all you have to do is be like, all right, fine. Why don't you just center this div for me? And the look on their face will be like,
well, they probably use JavaScript.
Yeah. They probably do. But I feel like that's a cop-out, right? Like you should be able to sling some HTML and CSS to at least create an effective layout. I can't tell you the number of developers that I've run into, and I still see table-based layouts for stuff just because that's what they knew, and they can move everything around by just buffering boxes and moving stuff around. But, man, you want to talk about not accessible. Do everything in tables. Yeah,
for sure. Well, that's the world I started in, was tables and frames. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if CSS wasn't a thing, that's how we would still be doing it, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I mean, there are still purposes for tables, of course, but it shouldn't be your core layout tool.
No. But as far as the JavaScript argument goes, like I would love to be able to efficiently write JavaScript, whether that's in Angular or Vue or React, and that's another issue. There's so many libraries and frameworks out there. Yep. None of that makes it easy to do, to learn everything. And that's why, I'm kind of on the camp where like learn vanilla JS first and then kind of jump into the frameworks and libraries.
Well, I'm with you on that. I think when I look at things like React and all the other stuff that's out there, all they did was create a framework that's really familiar for back-end developers. Mm-hmm. But they didn't make it easier for folks like you that don't have that back-end familiarity, right? And so now you've just made it harder, because now you've taken away my ability to write raw HTML and CSS and wrapped it in this huge layer of nonsense. That's hard, man.
Yeah. But I mean, I wish I could do it. I wish I could, like, because I have some ideas for some sweet stuff to build, but it's like I don't have the JavaScript chops to do it. I don't think I'll ever get the JavaScript chops to do it. So the projects just sit on the back burner, which sucks. But like, well, I don't know how much more I can study to the point where it's just like, I'm done. I am done with this. That's the reason I dropped out of college. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. No, I mean, there eventually is just a wall on stuff. And I think I find myself butting up against those all the time. I've talked privately about people of this, but I haven't actually said this here on my channel. But like, part of the reason that I'm coding every day live on stream is to learn. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've built all sorts of projects, all in different languages and all sorts of stuff, but JavaScript is not, like, especially like node development, that's not my strength. That's not something that I know inherently. And so it's been very humbling, and I don't know if there's a right phrase for this, but it's been very good for me to be able to just get in front of people and freely express that, like, I don't know everything that I'm doing here, and I'll happily Google stuff as I'm streaming, because I'm not here to pretend I'm an expert. Right. I'm here to make it so that everybody else realizes, like, oh, well, like, he works on the Alexa team. He builds stuff all the time, and he still doesn't know everything. Like, I want that message to be out there. Yeah. Even if it's at the cost of my reputation or whatever, that's fine. I can live with that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons. Like, when I was streaming, I got into streaming when I was in Denver, and it's like I was writing code and stuff, and I flat out tell people in my stream, like, I have no idea how to do this, and I still look shit up all the time. Like, I am like the CSS person or like the accessibility person or whatever. I still look shit up all the time. It's like I forgot how to like link a CSS style sheet to an HTML document.
I can't remember
what is this context. Yeah, what is this syntax? I don't know, so I got to look it up. It's just
right. Man, I'm totally with you. I'm glad you said that. Because I think that's something that I'm seeing. So I have two kids. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, and both of them are going through this in school, where their teachers are consistently asking them to just produce knowledge that they've memorized. And at least from a development perspective, I have stopped caring about memorizing.
Yeah.
There are so many resources in so many places that I can just jump into Google or whatever search engine, type in my question, and I have the answer instantly. Why would I waste the time memorizing all that stuff? I mean, the stuff I use every day, of course, I'm going to memorize that. But memorization isn't important anymore. And when we were kids, when we were in school, you had to do that. If you wanted to do research, you went to the library and pulled out one of the dusty encyclopedias.
Yep.
But you didn't have a tool in your pocket that had all the answers all the time.
Right.
And I really think that that's going to be the thing that moves our workforce, our industries, everything forward, is stopping focusing on memorization and training people to enter their adult lives as problem solvers. Yeah. If you can solve problems, it doesn't matter what you know now. You have the tools in front of you to go solve whatever that problem happens to be.
Right. I agree.
It's really hard for me when I see my kids being asked to memorize nonsense. Here's a great example. In Ohio, I don't know if this is true everywhere, but it's certainly here in Ohio. My son is, I'm sorry, not my son. My daughter has been taking a computer science class every year of high school. She took like the intro to computer science class her freshman year. She took AP Computer Science 1 her sophomore year, AP Computer Science 2 her junior year, which she's in right now. And the AP Computer Science 2 exam is all in Java, and it's a written exam. You don't get to use a computer. Are you kidding me?
What is that nonsense?
It literally is a paper and pencil test, not multiple choice. You need to write a function that does this with a pencil.
Wow.
I mean, come on. I mean, just by being in any kind of IDE, you're going to get half the information you need anyway.
Yeah.
Why do I have to memorize exactly what the structure of a function is, or make sure that, like, I don't, it just seems crazy to me that you're going to have to write that on paper and pencil to take an AP test for computer science.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
That's leaning on memorization, not problem solving.
Right.
And we're getting some good conversation in the chat for sure. This guy Lucimans says, "Yeah, I took it. You need to write it with pen and paper." That's even worse if it's pen.
Yeah, unless it's like erasable pen.
Right. Let me make a mistake at least. Marcus Lyon said, "This is one of my more recent technical interviews. I was handed a sheet of paper with a React component on it and asked to find out what's wrong with it on a piece of paper." Oh,
so
man.
that's I've actually had to do. So when I was interviewing, I was working at DTE at the time, and I left to go do an interview because it was my co-op. So I left to go do an interview for another company in Troy, and they gave me 5 or 6 stacks of, or a stack of papers stapled together, and this was the technical interview. They're like, "We'll come back in an hour." I'm like, "What?" And they gave me a pen, and I'm like, "No computer, no nothing."
Right.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, they're like, "How would you write this object in JavaScript if we gave you, a dog in different breeds? Like, how would you write this?" So I'm like, I'm writing this shit out on paper. And there's like other questions, like, how do you write this function and pass this in, etc. And there was a few, multiple choice and I think maybe true and false or some shit. And I got as much of it done. I just sat on the table and I was just kicked back and just drinking water. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to do any of this shit. Like, I'm not writing piece of paper down. And they came back in, and I'm like, here, I was like, I got through some of this, but like, I don't know what to tell you. This is not going to work for me. So
right. No,
that was the end of that.
It's absolutely crazy to me to think that we expect people to do this. And someone made the comment in chat here about how the tests, the interviews are being written by people that got through that interview process, and they feel like they owe it to the next batch of people that are hired to do the same thing. The problem I have with that is the same problem I have with like presidential candidates. And I'm not trying to get on a political rant, so there's certainly plenty of that we could talk about this week. But if you think about like the Electoral College, it sounds like a lot of people hate it.
Yeah.
But the person that has the power to change it is the person that was elected with that system. Why would they change it?
Right.
I think that goes the same way with interviews. I worked at a startup before I got to Amazon, and they had a whiteboard interview I was the VP of product at this company, so I wasn't actually like in a specifically technical role, but they knew where I came from. They knew my background, and they used to joke all the time that they didn't think I could pass their interview, and I was like, it's because your interview's dumb. Just sitting there and asking people to do a bubble sort or do all this other kind of like nonsense hoop jumping that they're never going to do in the real world.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, we all have our resumes publicly online. Between LinkedIn and GitHub, you should already know everything you need to know about what I'm capable of.
Yep.
Now, I'm sure there are many developers that maybe don't even have their own GitHub or aren't sharing their code online, but it wouldn't be hard to do it. Right. And it makes it so easy for someone to just jump in and be like, this cat knows what he's doing. I got it. This is great.
Yeah, for sure. I had an interview one time for a company in it was either Birmingham or Bloomfield Hills, and it was a whiteboard interview, and they were like almost like a startup, and they were saying, oh, we have a big deadline. We got to get this done in 3 months, and we're an Angular startup or something, and they were using Aurelia, and they had me go on the whiteboard, and they're like, can you write out? We're going to just a JavaScript question. Can you write out a string and reverse it? And I'm like, I don't write JavaScript. And they're like, all right, well, have a good day. And then I walked out. I'm like, sorry, you knew from the rip before I walked into this door, I was not a JavaScript developer, and you're going to ask me JavaScript questions.
Right.
Why did you waste my time? Now, I know how to do that now. I know how to reverse a string. But
sure.
Barely.
But here's the thing. When are you ever actually going to do that? When are we taking our text and reversing the characters? Never.
No.
So what are you really testing there? I don't know.
Yeah, I know you have to use split, join, something. You can use an array. I don't know. Yeah. I know you use a combination of that shit. That's all I know.
But the thing is if you wanted to reverse it, let's say you really had that requirement in a piece of software that you were working on. You could go type into Google, how do I reverse a string in JavaScript, and find 700 examples of it.
Yep.
So why do I need to have that in my head on a piece of paper? I don't know.
Exactly.
I could do hours on this specific topic. It drives me crazy.
For sure.
So what else is going on, man? What else you got going on in your COVID constrained life?
Oh, just hoping on a vaccine. I know that they just announced I think it was yesterday, that January 11th here in Michigan, they're ramping up vaccines for people. So anybody that's 65 and older, K through 12 instructors, child and healthcare, other healthcare workers, so that take care of people, like visiting angels and stuff like that. What I'm worried about is, so my mom, she's high risk. She has had cancer. She's beaten it twice. She just came back the other day with a test that she was perfect, cancer free. She just had another test the other day. Everything's great, but she's a few months shy of 65. So it's like, how much leeway is the state of Michigan going to have with people? Even though she'll be 65 in May, but she's high risk. And I want her to get, I'm scared to go see her. I went up for Christmas. Everything's been fine though. I wore a mask the whole time I was there as much as I could. But how much leeway are they going to have with people? It's like, come on, a couple more months, she'll be 65 and she's high risk. She needs the vaccine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my father-in-law will be 80 in February, and they just announced next week that anyone 80 or older can start getting the vaccine. And I was like, he's like a month away. Yeah. But he's not high risk. He's at 80 years old. He's still the dude going to the gym 4 days a week. Yeah. So he'll be fine. But it's still we gotta get these people in. But I found out 2 weeks later they roll it back to 75. So it's just we're trying to get the 80-year-olds in first. Yeah. But yeah, man. The vaccine is necessary, and I honestly wonder what the world's going to be like once we have it. For Amazon, they've shut down all travel for me until July 1st, as of right now. But am I going to be able to go someplace on July 1st? Right. Probably not. Right. Where would I go? Are people going to congregate? Probably not. Yeah. I hope that there's some good fall events that we can go to and meet up and talk to people, but man, I think before maybe October, November, before we really see an in-person event that people go to.
Yeah. Well, what boggles me too is and I was talking about this the other day. It's if you get the vaccine, you still have to wear a mask. I don't know. Even if you wait 2 weeks after it starts kicking in, why do you have to wear a mask?
Yeah. Well, my understanding on that, there's two, is that I think you can still transmit it even if you don't get it. So
then what's the point of the vaccine?
to keep you from dying, basically to keep you from dying.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily prevent everybody else. But from a social engineering perspective, I think wearing a mask is still a good idea.
I would definitely do it. I just want things to be back to normal-ish so we can be out. If I got to wear a mask with a vaccine, okay, whatever. Right. But I just want to be around people.
I've been thinking a lot about this actually, because like what happens so you get the vaccine? Are we going to give people cards that verify that they've been vaccinated? And then are they going to show that instead of wearing their mask, or like what's? It reminds me of a Dr. Seuss story. Have you seen the Star-Bellied Sneetches story?
Mm-mm.
So the whole concept is that there is a collection. They're called Sneetches. They're like kind of birds. They live on a beach, and they some of them have stars on their stomachs that like they were born with, and some of them don't. And the people with stars feel that they are so superior to those that don't. And then this like crafty salesman wanders into town, and he has a machine that will put a star on your belly, like a tattoo that looks exactly the same. And so everybody that didn't have one goes to the machine, gets the star, and then they're like, oh, now we're all the same. We're all equal. Until the people that had the stars realize like, oh, well, we still want to be elite. We still want to be better than them. So he has another machine that'll remove a star. And so then they start removing their stars, saying that people with stars are the ones that are inferior, right? And what you end up seeing is that he has the two machines set up, and people are just cycling between the two, trying to be whatever the elite class is. Yeah. And I feel like if people have a vaccine card or whatever, I mean, we've already seen this with, lack of a better term, like the Karen persona. They're making up their own fake medical cards to say like, look, I don't have to wear a mask. My doctor, it's all just made up. But we're seeing that already. So I feel personally like it's probably masks for the year.
Yeah.
Just until everybody actually has been vaccinated. And then, fine, okay, if we want to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
Oh, we've been at it an hour, man.
Hey, that's good, man. Time flies when you're having fun, bro.
It is. I'm so glad we got an opportunity to do this. So I generally don't make people drag past an hour, but I really do appreciate the time you took this morning to join me here. This has been awesome.
I appreciate you having me, man. It was fun.
Cool. All right, well, I hope we will stay in touch. And we'll certainly get to meet in person. I'll even drink a Bud Light with you.
Hell yeah,
we can hang out in person at some point in the very near future.
Cool. I'm down, man. Let me know.
All right. Awesome. Well, before we leave, I'm going to let everybody know we're gonna sign off here. But as we try to do most days, we're going to go raid somebody. We'll find another channel that's going on, and there's literally no channels that I follow that are available right now. I wonder if I can. Boy, that's tough. Normally there's a few people streaming. I guess we're not going to raid today. All right, no raids for us. So we're going to sign some things off. And Chris, again, thank you so much. You guys can all find him. His Twitter handle's right there on the screen, Salt and Burnham. Actually, that was one thing I wanted to ask before we ended. What's the background on that? Let's hear the story on your username.
So if you are a fan of Supernatural, you'll know the...
Got it. My wife is. I have never watched, but I think I may have to going forward.
Yeah. So one way to. So I'm really big in supernatural and paranormal and Bigfoot, Mothman, and everything. I used to be in a paranormal research group when years ago, and supernatural. One of the way to get rid of an entity is you salt and burn the bones.
Got it.
So that's where salt and burn came from.
Very good. All right. Well, that makes more sense to me now. I was like, man, that sounds rough. But now it's got more sense. All right. Thank you guys all for tuning in. It's been a pleasure, Chris. And I will see you guys all on Monday.
Positive
Everybody take
vibes. Care. Later.
Bye.